Seattle rain. A blue paper kite shields an old man's oxygen tube as Jamie freezes. Why does this stranger whisper his late mother's name? The rain in Volunteer Park came down like a million tiny threads, silver against the firs. I held the blue paper kite over the old man's head the way you hold a book over a candle, careful not to crush the light. The kite sticks were skinny and crossed like bones, the tissue paper a little darker where the water soaked through. His oxygen tube ran from his nose to a small tank at his side, humming softly, a steady breath that wasn't his. "You'll catch cold, kid," he said, voice rough. His cheeks were pale, beard trimmed short, winter in his eyes. "I'm okay," I said. "I like the rain. It makes the air smell like pennies." He laughed, then winced, a cough close to his ribs. "Pennies. That's new," Grandpa called from the path, leaning his broom against a bench as he hurried toward us. "Jamie, you can't—" "Hey, sir, I'm sorry, he just—" "It's fine," the man said, raising a hand. "We're sheltering." Grandpa stopped under the maple. His jacket was one of those neon janitor coats that glow even in gray. His cap was pulled low. He looked tired in the way night shift makes you tired, from the bones outward. "If Jamie's bothering you, He isn't." The man's gaze flicked to me, then to the kite, a thin smile. "Blue suits the day." I nodded. Blue flies better than red, maybe because the sky wants it back. The man studied my face like he was measuring something invisible. The rain threaded between us. "What's your name?" "Jamie." His mouth moved like he already knew. "Jamie." He said it again softer, the sound more breath than word, and for an instant I thought he'd say Mom's name next. He didn't. He looked down at his hands. The left one had a faint tremor. Grandpa stood closer, shoulders bent into the weather. "My grandson's 6, he said to fill the quiet. "He builds those kites from the art bin at the community center. Sorry if he surprised you." "I like surprises," the man said, and something like grief passed over his face and was gone. "I'm Patrick. Patrick Lane." Grandpa blinked. The name hung there, familiar like a billboard you see from the bus. "The software man?" Patrick shrugged. "Was." He tapped the tank gently. "Now I'm mostly park bench with accessories." I held the kite a little higher because the rain had turned to pinpricks. "You can use it if you want." Patrick watched the blue paper tremble above us, its tail of cotton thread sticking to the wet. "That's kind." Grandpa shifted. "We were just passing through before school." "I clean down on Pike at night," he said. "Volunteer Park's our shortcut." Patrick nodded like he'd expected as much. "You from around here?" "Rainier Valley," Grandpa said. I added, "My mom liked the conservatory here. She said the plants breathed for you when you were sad," and Patrick's eyes lifted toward the glass house, blurred in the drizzle. "Smart woman." "She died last winter," I said. The words landed gently, the way snow lands on a fence post. "Grandpa says we light the porch for her." In case the wind gets lost, Patrick swallowed and looked away. The tremor in his hand steadied as he laid his palm on his knee. "I'm sorry, Jamie." "It's okay," I said, because adults liked it when you said that. But I held the kite tighter over him, and the rain sounded like pages turning. A woman in a black raincoat appeared on the path, hood up, phone in hand. She waved. "Mr. Lane? We should head back in 10 if you want to beat the traffic." Her voice had that soft edge people use around hospitals. "5 more, Patrick said without looking at her. The woman, maybe his assistant, nodded and stepped aside. "You made that?" Patrick asked me, pointing at the kite. "Yeah," I said. "From gift wrap at the thrift store and chopsticks from the soup place." I showed him the spine, taped and retaped. Grandpa says it's silly to fly in the rain, but the wind likes wet days. Grandpa made a sound like he was not entirely convinced. Patrick grinned faintly. "You're an engineer, Jamie." I liked how he said my name. Not baby soft. Not the way the school nurse did when I came in for crackers. Like it was a word that could hold weight. "What's that on the tail?" he said, peering at a faint pencil scrawl on the paper strip. I squinted. The letters were smudged. "Just a note from my teacher. She says I should write messages to the sky. If I write them small, they're secrets. If I write them big, they're prayers." "What did you write today?" Patrick asked. I hesitated. The letters were ghosted from the rain, but I remembered the line. I started, then shook my head. It's dumb. Nothing you write is dumb, Patrick said, and for a heartbeat he sounded like a father talking to a child he knew in every season. What did you write? See the invisible, I said quickly, and looked down like saying it might break it. Patrick's breath hitched so quietly I felt it more than heard it. That's good. Grandpa touched my shoulder. We should go, bud. Wait, Patrick said, his eyes still on the tail. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded handkerchief, old cotton, with an embroidered letter J at the corner. He dabbed the water from the kite gently, the way you touch a bruise. May I hold this for a moment? I passed him the kite. His fingers were careful, reverent. The assistant watched from a respectful distance, tapping something into her phone. Jamie, Patrick said, still looking at the blue. What was your mother's name? Claire, I said. Claire Brooks. He closed his eyes for a second, as if the name were a chord struck in a quiet room. Claire. When he opened them, they were shining. She would have liked this. You knew her? The question came out small. Patrick's gaze drifted past me, back in time. I knew a Claire once, he said. Long time ago. Grandpa's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Interest under worry. The rain tapered, the park suddenly wider and brighter. City sketched beyond the trees. A dog barked twice, sharp and far. Patrick's assistant stepped closer. Mr. Lane, your next is at 11. He nodded, then offered the kite back to me, and hesitated. Would it be all right if I borrowed this? Just for the day. I'll take good care of it. I'll fix the spine where it's cracked. He looked to Grandpa. I can return it this weekend. Maybe you two could stop by my office. There's a rooftop that misses a kite. Grandpa glanced at me, then at the frayed tape at the spine, then at the man with the oxygen and the tired eyes that had gone gentle. He weighed the bus fare, the hours he slept between shifts, the way my hand tightened on the cotton tail. If Jamie's okay with it, he said. I nodded. You can borrow it. Patrick's smile was small and grateful, like a porch light. He slid the handkerchief around the center and tied it loosely, his thumb brushing the embroidered "Joe, thank you." Where's your office? Grandpa asked, voice cautious. Capitol Hill, Patrick said. Lane Systems. You can't miss the glass, with the ugly art outside. He tried another smile. Saturday works? Grandpa checked the inside of his wrist, where he'd penned bus times in blue ink. I can make it. Patrick's assistant handed him a card. If plans change, call me. Nora Park, she looked at me. Nice kite. Thanks, I said. It's lighter than it looks. Patrick tucked the blue paper close, careful as if it were warm bread. He finally met my eyes, and, for a moment, I felt like he was looking through the skins of weather and time to something that connected us. He inhaled, the tube sighed, the tank hummed. Jamie, he said again, almost a prayer. I'll see you Saturday. Grandpa took my hand. Say bye, bud. Bye, I said. Don't let the wind steal it. I won't, Patrick said. He stood with effort, bracing on the bench, and the assistant steadied the tank. As they turned toward the path, he looked back once more, lips shaping a name I couldn't hear. We watched them go until the rain was just a memory soaking the ground dark. Grandpa exhaled, slow. You okay? Yeah, I said, though my chest felt like a room where a song had been playing and someone had turned it off. The grass smelled like pennies again. I looked at the faint letters on the tail, the ones I could still see in my head even though the paper was gone. See the invisible. Grandpa squeezed my hand. Come on. Bus will be at the corner. We started walking. The conservatory glass came up bright, a warm lung in the gray. I glanced back once, toward the gate where Patrick had disappeared, and I knew Saturday felt bigger than just a day on a calendar. It felt like a door. At the bus stop, a gust lifted a stray feather along the curb, a little white comma that wouldn't settle. I watched it spin and thought of Patrick tying his handkerchief on the kite, the stitched J catching light. I thought of how he'd said Mom's name like it hurt and healed at the same time. "Grandpa," I said as the number 10 rumbled toward us, brakes sighing. "Do you think he really knew Mom?" Grandpa looked down the street, squinting into the mist as if an answer might be hiding in the glare. "I think," he said, "we'll find out on Saturday." The bus opened its doors with a kneel. We climbed aboard, the heater blasting the chill off our faces. I took the window seat and pressed my palm against the fogging glass. Outside, the park blurred and brightened by turns, like someone was adjusting a dimmer on the day. Somewhere across town, a man carried a blue paper kite into a building of glass. Seattle's Saturday light came in polite, as if it knew the city preferred gray. I sat on the bus with Grandpa, counting stops like steps on a ladder. Capitol Hill rose ahead, brick, glass, coffee steam curling from doorways. My knees knocked because the heater rattled, or because my chest did. I pressed my fingers into the handrail and felt the city's pulse through the metal. From the sidewalk, we could see it. A building of glass and light, lane systems etched in steel like a name on a ship. The sculpture out front looked like a melted ladder or a question mark that had given up. Grandpa smirked at it. "Ugly art," he said, and I almost laughed. Inside, the lobby smelled like rain and lemon. A woman at the desk glanced at our coats, the frayed cuffs on mine, the neon jacket on Grandpa, and then at the card we carried. "You're Jamie and Mr. Brooks?" she asked. "Nora will meet you." Elevators hissed open, a flash of mirror, a million versions of us. Grandpa straightened his cap. He looked like he did before he clocked in, shoulders squared, hands clean. The doors slid shut, and I watched our faces in the reflection hop floors with the numbers. When they opened again, Nora stood there in a navy sweater that matched the sky between clouds. She smiled like she meant it. "Good morning," she said. "He's been watching the door." I swallowed and felt my heart make room. We turned a corner and found a space that didn't look like any office I'd imagined. Plants along the windows, a long table where someone had left a mug that said "Code like a kid." And on a stand by the glass, lit by the kind of lamp that makes things look important, sat my blue paper kite. Clean, straight. The spine no longer bowed. The tissue gleamed under a thin, clear skin. "You fixed it," I whispered. "I laminated the paper," Nora said softly. "Just enough to keep out rain. The tail's still cloth, keeps its soul." She watched my face, something in her eased. "He's on the terrace," Grandpa mouthed, "thank you." We followed her through tempered glass doors that sighed at the edges. Seattle spread itself below, a collage of rooftops and wet streets. The sound lay like a coin you didn't spend, ferries cutting white threads across it. Patrick stood by the low wall, his oxygen tank tucked in a canvas sleeve that matched his coat. The tube curved from his nose like a second smile. He turned when the door clicked, and for an instant, the city went quiet behind his eyes. "Hey," he said simple. He looked smaller without the park around him, like the sky in here had to share space with ceiling and glass. But when he saw the kite, his shoulders lifted. "We owed you a rooftop." "I owed you a spine," Nora said. She set the stand's brake so it wouldn't roll. "I'll be inside." Patrick rolled the tank closer and tapped the kite's crosspiece with a fingertip. "She's ready to fly," he said. "We'll pick a dry day." Or, he cut a glance at me, "ignore the forecast and trust your wind." I touched the paper. It was still my blue. The pencil words on the tail lay faint beneath the new sheen, like something written under skin. "See the invisible." Grandpa took in the view like it was a bill he'd worry about later. "Some roof." Patrick's mouth tilted at one corner. "I forget it's here until I remember," he said, and the words sounded like they meant more than a building. He looked at me. "I wanted to thank you for Wednesday. For the way you cared. You were wet," I said. "And the tube." He nodded. "Most people look away when they see this." He touched the oxygen line, not with pity, just accuracy. "You didn't." Grandpa cleared his throat. "Mr. Lane?" "Patrick," he said. "Patrick." Grandpa tried, and the name softened his voice. We appreciate the invite. Don't want to take your morning, you're not, Patrick said. He gestured to a bench. Sit a minute? We did. The bench was warm from a hidden strip of heat, the kind of smart detail that made you think someone cared how cold sat in your bones. The city breathed around us. Sirens far off, a gull, a train's horn down by the water. Patrick leaned back, drawing air slow, the tank answering. I started lane systems when I was 24, he said. Not in a bragging way, statement of weather. We built a cloud thing before clouds were cool. It got big. I got busy. I missed. A lot, Grandpa folded his hands. Work can be a hungry animal. Patrick's eyes slid to mine. You like building things? Kites, obviously. I like when they work, I said. And when they don't, I like making them work. He smiled in a way that put years back on his face. That's the whole game. Nora stepped out with 3 paper cups. Hot chocolate, she said, handing one to me, one to Grandpa. Doctor says coffee is for people with more than one lung. Patrick accepted a cup anyway, sniffed the chocolate like it might make air all by itself. Nora watches over me, he said. I schedule, she answered, but her glance at the tank was fond and precise. Then, to Grandpa, Jamie's teacher mentioned he brings extra crackers for kids who forgot lunch. Hope that's okay, I spoke with her. I cleared it with the front office. Grandpa blinked, surprised, then nodded. He shares. Sometimes more than he should, I stared into the chocolate to keep my face from doing something dumb. Everyone gets hungry, I said. Patrick's voice gentled. I know. He looked at Nora. A conversation seemed to happen without words. She slipped back inside. Patrick set his cup on the bench and pulled a small folder from his coat. Inside, a page with letterhead I didn't recognize, neat paragraphs, and his name at the bottom. He wasn't performing when he handed it to Grandpa. He was serious like rain. It's a letter of intent, he said. I asked my attorney to draft it Wednesday afternoon after the park. He pointed to a line. I'm establishing a fund with the Seattle Foundation. The Claire Brooks Scholarship, STEA M-Track, for elementary students in Rainier Valley. Summer programs, kit grants, mentorship. Nora will manage the admin. It isn't charity tossed like coins. It's a structure, something that lasts. Grandpa's mouth opened, closed. He read, lips moving over the words. At the signature, his finger paused. Patrick Lane. The ink had the tremor of a hand that had been through weather. Is this, Grandpa started. This is for kids who see air like pennies, Patrick said, then nearly laughed at himself. The sound turned to a cough, short and under control. For kids who build kites that keep old men dry. For Claire's neighborhood at my mother's name, the temperature changed. Grandpa set the paper on his knee carefully, like it might fly. You said you knew a Claire. Patrick nodded, the lines at his eyes deeper for an instant. She interned here once, summer of 17. He looked out across the roofs as if the old sun might still be there if he checked. She had this way of asking a question that made you realize you'd answered it wrong for years. I tried to build an answer in my head that didn't collapse. My mom worked a lot of different places, I said. Sometimes 2 at once. He drew a breath. The tank hummed. I'd like to talk more about her. If that's okay, he turned to me. And I'd like to hire a tutor for you who doesn't make school feel like work. Someone who will help you make more things that fly. Grandpa sat very still. He was a man who worked nights, counted bus transfers, returned deposit bottles for quarters. A weight shifted off him that no one else could see. It made me want to hand him my cup because my hands had too much in them. Patrick, he said, careful with the name, we're not looking for handouts. I know, Patrick said. I'm looking for a way to do right. Sometimes that looks like a check. Sometimes it looks like showing up. His eyes held mine. I'd like to show up. A gull cut the sky, white against white. It felt like the city had leaned closer to listen. Nora opened the door again, phone in hand. Sorry, she said, and you could tell she meant it. Legal is on 2. Something about next week's filings. 30 seconds? Patrick gave us a look that apologized and promised in the same second. Back in a minute. He stepped inside with Nora, the glass closing on the soft elevator bell. The bench hummed heat under my legs. My blue tail flicked in a draft like it had a mind. Grandpa watched the door. What are we walking into, buddy? He murmured. Not scared, just taking inventory. I looked past my reflection in the window to where the city kept its secrets. Down on Pike, someone set out buckets of tulips. On the water, a ferry turned, its wake writing something only birds could read. Overhead, the kite waited, words faint and stubborn beneath the new shine. See the invisible. The door clicked again. Patrick returned, face composed but changed, like he'd heard a note slightly out of tune. He sat, folded forward a little, then straightened. "There's something I should have said sooner," he began, voice steady, even as the wind lifted the edge of the page in Grandpa's hands. Patrick's eyes held steady on mine, but something in them wavered, like heat over asphalt. "I knew your mother," he said. The words came out careful, set down one at a time. "Claire worked here a summer. We were close. I chose this place over everything else back then. I shouldn't have." He let the air settle. "I didn't know she was pregnant. No one told me. Hearing your name, seeing your face, Jamie. Things I buried, stood up." My fingers tightened around the hot chocolate lid. The rooftop air felt bigger than the city. "You think I'm—" "I don't know," he said quickly, a hand up like he could slow the thought before it hurt. "I won't say that and make a promise I can't keep. I want to do this right. If you and your grandfather are open to it, we can ask a question and then respect the answer." His gaze shifted to Grandpa. "With your permission." No pressure, no rush. Grandpa's jaw worked once, twice. He glanced at the kite stand like the answer might be stenciled on the metal. "What does do it right look like in your world?" "Chain of custody testing," Patrick said. "A lab that follows Washington rules. We'd involve counsel so no one can twist what comes out of it. Everything voluntary, everything in writing. And if you say no, I'll still keep my word about the scholarship. That's not contingent on anything." The word scholarship seemed to hover, then settle into the space between us like a folded blanket. I stared at the faint pencil tail under the laminate. See the invisible. It had looked like a game when I wrote it. Now it felt like instructions. Patrick sat back, drained a small sip, then took a slow breath through the tube. The tank hummed in the quiet, a metronome to the moment. "I can't promise. I'll be good at this," he said softly. "Breathing, talking, the past. But I can promise a process that won't hurt you." I watched the place the tube met his cheek. "Does it hurt you?" His mouth tilted. "Less than it used to." Nora opened the door and hovered like a comma. "Want me to bring lunch up, or do you all want the canteen?" "The canteen," Patrick said. "Let's walk like we do that every day." We moved slow. Patrick matched my steps, not the other way around. In the elevator, he studied the floor. Numbers like each one had a memory stuck to it. The doors parted on a bright space that smelled like tomatoes and bread. Engineers lined up with lanyards and jokes, wet jackets slung over chairs. Nobody stared. Or if they did, they were good at doing it with kindness. I balanced a tray with a grilled cheese and tomato soup, and half a pear wrapped in paper. Grandpa chose chili and cornbread. Patrick picked at a bowl of something green with noodles like rubber bands. We sat near a window where rain laced the glass and made everyone outside look like a watercolor. "Jamie," Patrick said gently, "is it true you share your lunch at school?" I shrugged. "Sometimes." "Why?" His voice wasn't a trap, it was an actual question. "Because it's dumb to eat when the kid next to you can hear you chewing." I took a bite of sandwich, the cheese pulling a thin string. "And I don't like when my stomach sounds louder than my head, so I figure other people don't either." Grandpa's eyes softened. "He keeps crackers in his backpack like first aid." Patrick nodded, like that fit into a map. "We can make first aid boxes better," he said. "Nora?" She appeared with the kind of timing that made you think she had a microphone in the air. "Already drafted a micro-grant line item for teacher-led snack funds at the 2 closest elementaries," she said, deadpan. Then she ruined the cool by smiling at me. "But we'll pretend we thought of it next week." Grandpa set down his spoon. "Nora, you said you talked to his teacher." "Just to confirm what we already knew," she said. "Jamie does quiet good. That's the best kind." She turned to Patrick. "Legal will send the template. If you want, I'll also track down Claire's HR file. For you, not for the board." A muscle moved in Patrick's cheek. "Thank you." He looked at Grandpa. "I won't dig without your consent." Grandpa touched the paper napkin, folded and unfolded it. "Digging is part of seeing," he said, "but we stay above ground. No tabloids, no surprises." "At recess, no tabloids," Patrick echoed. "I hate them more than oxygen." We ate. The room moved around us. Forks chimed. Someone laughed too loud at a joke about servers. A barista milked steam like a violin. It felt like a place where people made invisible things work for strangers they'd never meet. Patrick coughed, just twice, and Nora slid a water toward him before I could blink. He gave her a look that said, "Stop counting," and she gave him a look that said, "I will, but I won't." He turned back to me. "Your kite," he said, reminded me of something Claire said. She had this line about building for what people can't describe yet. I swallowed tomato and the ache behind it. She wrote that. On the tail, his hand stilled on the bowl. Of course she did. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a small creased square of photo paper. He hesitated, then slid it across the table to me. A younger Patrick, less gray, no tube, stood on this same terrace, arm half awkward around a woman with a dark braid and a smudge of ink on her wrist. Claire's smile was tilted like it had a secret. In her right hand, a blue scrap of wrapping paper fluttered, the edges torn, a pencil tucked behind her ear. My breath caught so suddenly, the world went quiet for a second. Grandpa leaned in, and his face did that thing when grief and joy run into each other in a doorway, and both say, "You first." "She was always stealing office pens," Patrick said, soft. We argued about tabs versus spaces and about whether rain was sad or just honest. I traced the air over the picture, not touching it. "Grandpa." "I see her," he whispered. "Lord, I see her." Patrick didn't look away. "If we do a test," he said, voice level, "we do it with care. If we don't, we keep going with what we have. I won't vanish either way." I thought about vanishing. How winter does it to puddles, how night does it to porches, if you forget to flip the switch. I looked at Grandpa. He nodded, slow. "We'll think," he said. "We'll talk. We're not saying yes. We're not saying no. We're saying we hear you. That's all I can ask," Patrick said. After lunch, we walked the hallway where old product posters hung like fossils of ideas. Patrick pointed to one with a stylized cloud. "That one almost sank us," he said, fond the way people are with storms that didn't. Back in a small conference room, he handed Grandpa a card with 2 numbers and a name I didn't know. "This is Rachel Park," he said, "my attorney. Not the company's. If you want the lab details, call her, not me, no pressure. And this," he slid another card to me with a hand-drawn kite on it, "is my number for when you build something that needs more sky." I tucked it into my pocket like a talisman. The room hummed with quiet electricity. Beyond the glass, the city went on being itself. Nora tapped the door and eased it open. Her eyes searched Patrick's, then flicked to Grandpa, to me. She held a slim manila folder like it might burn or bless depending on how you opened it. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, and you could tell she only did it when the scale tipped. Archival found something from 2017, HR exit paperwork, and an email draft that was never sent. It mentions a rooftop and a blue scrap, and she cut herself off, the rest for later. "Do you want me to?" Patrick's fingers hovered over the folder and stopped. He looked at me, at Grandpa, then back at the thin cardboard like it contained weather. The kite's laminated tail, visible through the glass, moved once in a breeze no one felt inside. "Bring it here," he said, but to me, "if you want to see it with me." I nodded. The words stuck in my throat, and Nora stepped forward, the folder balanced on her palms like a bridge we'd have to cross together. Nora set the folder on the table between us, then stepped back as if to leave space for air. The room had glass on 2 sides, rain-penciled lines down the panes, and smudged the skyline. I could see the rooftop through one wall, the blue tail visible if I leaned. Grandpa's hand hovered near my shoulder, not touching, steady as a porch post. Patrick didn't open the folder immediately. He looked at me. "If you want to read it first, you can," he said. "Or I can. Or we can do it like a story at bedtime. a paragraph each. The corner of his mouth lifted like he was reminding himself we could keep this human. I nodded. Together. He loosened the metal prongs, slid out a few thin pages. The first was a standard form. Lane Systems Intern Exit Interview. Summer 2017. Name, Claire Brooks. The boxes were checked with a neat, fast hand. Under reason for leaving, she'd written, returning to school plus family obligation. We'll continue to build what we talked about under would you return? She'd circled yes and drawn a tiny kite beside it, 2 strokes and a tail. Grandpa made a sound without words. Patrick's finger pressed the page at the doodle like he could feel ink ridges. He lifted the second sheet, an HR memo with dates, August to September 2017. A note that Claire had asked to keep her badge active for 1 extra week to access the rooftop after hours. Cleared by facilities. Another line. Supervisor, P Lane. Patrick's breath thinned. He set the memo down and pulled a third item. A printed draft, unsent. Email client header showed draft saved September 22, 2017, 11:41 p.m. Subject line, if you ever come back to the roof. He looked at me. Okay? I swallowed. Okay. He read the top line aloud, voice small to fit the room. Patrick, if you ever come back to the roof, I'll leave a blue scrap in the planter so you know I forgave you for choosing the company over a person with a heartbeat. His voice broke and reknit. I got an offer to stay full-time. I can't. Not with this new thing I'm carrying. Don't worry or make a thing of it. I don't need anything from you. I just want you to keep building for people who can't describe what they need yet. The words blurred a little for me, but I saw the shape of them. Forgive, carrying, rooftop, a blue scrap, the same blue. Patrick read the next paragraph silently. His eyes slowed. His thumb slid to the margin and stopped at a word. He closed his eyes. Do you want me to? Grandpa began, but Patrick shook his head gently. I can, Patrick said, and he did. There's a line. If someday you see someone small, who looks like me, changing your idea of weather, say hi even if you don't know why you feel like sunlight breaking after a long forecast. He breathed, thin. Then, if it's a boy, I might name him after your grandmother, the only person you ever called when you were scared. But don't get ideas. This is not a door. It's a window, open enough to let air in, not an invitation to move in. He exhaled, and the tube hissed soft. She saved it at 11:41 p.m., he said, then never sent it. The room changed size. Grandpa sat back slowly like the chair might tip if he moved too fast. Your grandmother's name? He asked, carefully. Judith, Patrick said. We called her Judy. Jamie isn't Judy, but he stopped. We don't force shapes. We just note them. I looked at the email text. The letters were like her voice to me, even though I'd never heard her write. Not a door, I said. A window. Patrick nodded, eyes bright. She always loved the right metaphor. Nora hovered at the threshold, then eased in, laying a single faded scrap from an evidence envelope on the table near the folder. It was torn blue wrapping paper, the same gift wrap texture as my kite, edges weathered, grit embedded like it had lived in a planter through a winter. Facilities found it wedged under the lip of the old cedar box when we redid the terrace, she said. They kept it because someone scribbled on the back. I thought. Patrick turned it over. On the underside in pencil, a date, September 22nd, a small curve that might have been the start of a C or the end of a J, the tail of a thought. We sat in that for a while, each of us measuring what was proof and what was feeling and how to hold both without breaking either. The room was quiet except for the city and the tube. Finally, Grandpa cleared his throat. We'll take your lawyer's number, he said. We'll think about the test. Not because of money or what it buys, because truth settles things that would otherwise keep flying in a bad way. Patrick nodded. Rachel will explain the chain of custody. It's straightforward. Nora lifted her chin toward the window, toward the direction of Rainier. In the meantime, she said gently. Jamie's school sent home a note about a winter clothing drive. If you're okay with it, I'd like to get him a coat that stops the wind before it reaches his bones. I can run it through the scholarship account, not out of pocket. Grandpa glanced at me. Pride is a funny thing. It sits on your shoulder and wants to turn every kindness into a debt. He exhaled and let it set down for a minute. Okay, he said, but not the expensive kind that makes other kids stare. The kind that looks like Seattle, Nora said. Gray and quiet. Patrick's phone buzzed on the table, a message lighting the screen with a name I didn't know. Colin Lane. The preview line, "We need to talk about your latest philanthropy stunt. This is reckless." Patrick turned the phone face down with 2 fingers. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't sigh. He just looked at the blue scrap and the draft email, and then at me like he was choosing where to set his attention. Family, he said. The single word, an entire weather report. We all have a Colin, Grandpa said dryly. Ours is an HOA that thinks kids playing tag counts as a meeting. Patrick laughed, the sound catching and freeing at once. Mine happens to have a law degree and a view of Puget Sound. He sobered. We'll keep things quiet. No press, no leaks. Nora's phone lit too, and she silenced it without looking. I'll draft a media lock. Also, Jamie's teacher mentioned he's been bringing half a sandwich and splitting it. I'd like to set up a prepaid tab at the grocery near your apartment for staples. No gift cards. Those can be stolen. It'll be a name on a list. You show ID, they ring it to the account. Quiet Grandpa's eyes went wet and hard at the same time. We're okay, he said automatically, then checked himself. We'd appreciate a little quiet. Quiet is my religion, Nora said. We broke then. Not with a dramatic thing, just with regular life. I used the bathroom and washed my hands too long because hot water felt like a holiday. Grandpa talked to Rachel on speaker, her voice crisp, calm, laying out steps like stones across a creek. Consent forms, cheek swabs, lab courier, sealed envelopes, results shared only with named parties. Patrick stood in the hall and breathed for a while, the way you do when a room has too much past in it. When we were ready to leave, Patrick walked us to the elevator. He touched the kite as we passed it, a small benediction. The rooftop is yours, he said. Come anytime. Even if I'm not here, you'll be here, I said, surprising myself with how much I wanted that to be true. His eyes warmed. I will try. The elevator doors closed us in. On the way down, Grandpa put his palm over my head the way he used to when I was small enough to pass under his arm. You good? He asked. I'm full, I said. The word fit. He nodded. Me too. Outside, Pike sounded like Saturday. Vendors under tents, someone playing a sad trumpet near the fish. We caught the 49 to the 7 and rode south, city sliding by in rain-thinned streaks. At our stop, the neon of the faux place hummed. Our building was 3 floors of tired wood and generous noise. The hallway smelled like laundry soap and last night's cumin. On our door, a paper bag hung from the knob. Inside, a gray parka still folded in factory pleats, a plain beanie, and a brief note on a sticky. Wrong size? We'll exchange. There was no logo, just warmth, waiting. I pressed the coat to my face and breathed in clean, Grandpa. Touched the beanie like a blessing. Seattle gray, he said. Won't make nobody stare. That night, as rain softened to a hush, I lay awake thinking about windows and doors. I imagined Mom up on some roof, tucking a blue scrap into a planter and looking back once at a man who wasn't ready. I pictured a draft saved at 11:41 p.m., a word not sent, a life sent anyway. My eyes were just closing when Grandpa's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. He didn't move. I slid out of bed, padded barefoot, checked the screen like I was touching a stove to see if it was hot. A text from Nora. All set for Monday, 8 a.m. at Dr. Patel's clinic, chain of custody. No press. Also, Patrick had a rough cough tonight. He's fine, just resting. Wanted you to know he asked if the kite could stay by the window. I stood in the dim, the fridge light painting the floor blue. Out the small window, the city blinked like a tired constellation. Somewhere above us, a laminated blue tail flicked softly in a draft. Behind me, Grandpa whispered, voice sandpapered by sleep and years. What's it say, Jamie? I looked from the phone, to the window, to the place where sky started if you climbed the right stairs. It says we have Monday, I murmured, and that the kite's still up there, where he can see it. Grandpa exhaled a little prayer. Then we'll keep it flying. I slid the phone onto the counter and stood very still, listening to the rain begin again, thin, persistent, like pencil on paper. While a new worry took shape at the edges of a good day, a shadow I couldn't quite name yet, but could feel moving toward us with soft feet. Monday smelled like wet wool and coffee. We took the 7 before sunrise, Grandpa's hand steady on the pole, my new gray parka zipped to my nose. The city was a dark watercolor. Pike Place lights blinked like they were waking up slow. Dr. Patel's clinic sat on a corner in First Hill, where the sidewalks tilt like they're listening. The sign was small, not fancy. The kind of place you trust, because it doesn't try too hard. Inside, it was quiet enough to hear the pen scratch on the sign-in sheet. Nora was already there, hair damp, clipboard under one arm, a paper sleeve around her coffee. A woman with lawyer posture stood beside her, late 30s, sharp eyes, a coat that did not mind rain. Mr. Brooks, Jamie Nora's voice dropped to morning level. This is Rachel Park. Rachel shook Grandpa's hand like agreements were things you could hold. Good to meet you. Everything today is voluntary. I'll walk you through each step so nothing surprises you. We'll follow standard chain of custody. Plain English? Grandpa asked. Photo ID verified. Consent form signed. Cheek swabs, no needles. Each sample goes into a labeled envelope, sealed with tamper-evident tape, placed into a secondary bag with a unique barcode. We both initial the seals. A licensed courier takes them directly to the lab. We get results in 5 to 7 business days, released only to the two of you and Patrick. If a judge ever needed them, the paperwork would already be clean. Nora added, no media, no internal leaks. Phones on airplane, while we're in rooms. Grandpa exhaled like a man putting down a backpack. Okay. The receptionist lifted a laminated number. Lane party? Here, Nora said. And Patrick appeared from the hallway, moving careful oxygen tank in tow. He wore a navy sweater that matched the sky between storms. His eyes warmed when they landed on me. You made it, he said. I like early, I answered, which wasn't true. I liked being where the day started when the thing mattered. A nurse led us back. The room smelled like antiseptic and winter coats. Dr. Patel was compact and kind without wasting words. We'll keep this simple, she said, checking our names against forms. Any questions before we begin? Grandpa looked at me. I looked at Patrick. He gave the smallest nod, like you do when you're about to step onto a moving ferry. We signed. The forms had more boxes than a moving day. Dr. Patel checked IDs. Grandpa's license, Patrick's passport. She took out 2 swabs, explained each move like she was narrating a dance. Open. 15 seconds each cheek. Good. I opened my mouth and counted Mississippi in my head. The cotton tip rough like the inside of a seashell. Patrick did the same, eyes on a spot over my shoulder where a print of the Cascades hung in fake silver frame. When it was done, Dr. Patel slid swabs into envelopes with our names and case number, sealed them with red tape that said void if lifted. We initialed across the seams, JB, PLRP, AP. The sound of pens on paper felt like a promise. Secondary bag, Rachel said softly. Barcodes. Click, seal, initial, another seal. Dr. Patel placed the bags in a rigid box, locked it with a plastic tie, whose number she read aloud. Courier is already downstairs, she said. Signature to signature. You can watch it leave if that helps. It helps, Grandpa said. Back in the waiting area, we could see rain smearing the glass doors like a curtain. A man in a navy windbreaker with a badge around his neck, Coastal Lab Courier, signed the log, accepted the box like it was fragile and ordinary at once, and walked back into the morning. I pressed my face to the window the way kids do for trains. The courier crossed the sidewalk, popped open the hatch of a white Prius, and tucked the box inside with a strap. He checked the tie number again, matched it to his manifest, and drove off into the wet brake lights the color of a quiet alarm. The box got small, then smaller, then gone. Patrick stood beside me, shoulder to shoulder, the tube a soft curve in the reflection. "It's out of our hands now," he said, and there was relief in it, and fear too. "Out of our hands," I echoed, the words trying to be brave. Behind us, the clinic door opened with a gust of cold air and a name. "Patrick." The voice was pure glass, clear, hard, reflective. A man stepped in, older than Patrick by a few years, suit cut to say I win arguments for a living. No coat, no umbrella. Rain jeweled his cuffs. He took in the room in one sweep. His eyes found me and slid past to Nora, to Rachel, then pinned Patrick. "Colin," Patrick said, and something in the room shifted, like a magnet turning. Rachel stepped between the men without looking like she did. "This is a private medical office. If you're here to speak with my client, you'll schedule through me." "I'm here as family," Colin replied, and as someone trying to keep him from setting furniture on fire because a child waved a sparkler in his direction. Patrick's jaw worked once. "Not today." Colin's gaze flicked to me again, not cruel, calculating. "You must be Jamie," he said, "Seattle's newest roomer." Grandpa straightened. "We're not roomers," he said. "We're people." Colin's smile was small and tired. "Everyone's people until a judge reads the filings." He turned to Patrick. "You can't be serious about this. You're ill. You're impulsive. And you just walked a sample into a chain you don't control." "Actually," Rachel said, "we control it precisely." "Your concern is noted and irrelevant." Colin's attention moved to her with interest that had teeth. "Miss Park." "Mr. Lane," she returned, polite the way mountains are polite. Nora's phone vibrated. She didn't look. "There will be no statements," she said to Colin. "No leaks. You know the playbook. I'll know who calls whom within the hour." Colin's eyes cooled. "You think you can outmaneuver me?" "I think you like to win so much you forget other people can play," Nora said. Patrick lifted a hand. "Enough." He faced his brother, the old love and old anger both alive in his voice. "We're going to see what's true. Then we'll deal with fallout, like grown men." Colin's gaze softened for the first time. Grief sneaking in through a crack neither of them could hide. "You're all I've got left," he said, too quiet, and the sentence hurt because it carried more than he meant to show. He hardened again. "Don't let these people take you apart." "Let me," Patrick said, voice careful, "put myself together." They stood there, two men in a waiting room where the heat clicked on and off, where a 6-year-old tried to memorize what adults meant when they said things they didn't fully say. Colin adjusted his cuff, water flicking to the mat. "We'll be in touch," he said to Rachel, which meant I won't go away. He glanced at me once more. "Good luck, Jamie." Then he left, the door pulling Rain after him. Nobody spoke for a count of 10. Patrick sat slowly. The cough came short and mean, and he caught it in the crook of his arm. Nora was already there with a tissue, the motion so practiced, it looked like air. "I'm okay," he said, and it sounded mostly true. Rachel checked her watch. "We'll file a notice with the court that a test occurred, not the results. Keeps the timeline clean. If Colin moves to block anything, a judge will see he's late." Grandpa's shoulders lowered a notch. "What happens now?" "Now," Rachel said, gathering papers, "we let the lab do what labs do." We stepped back into the morning. The rain had softened to the mist that lifted when cars passed. On the corner, a man sold umbrellas under a blue tarp. The tarp snapped and whispered. It sounded like a kite's tail. At the bus stop, Patrick stood with us like we were just 3 people catching the 3. He looked down Madison toward the sound, then up at the strip of sky caught between buildings. "Tuesday," he said, unprompted. "Would have been my mother's birthday." "What was she like?" I asked. He smiled without teeth. She saw through walls. She wanted me to be brave in small ways. The bus exhaled and knelt. We didn't get on. Patrick had a car coming. We stood a moment longer. Like the city had given us a pause it couldn't afford. My pocket buzzed. A text from a number I didn't know. Unknown. Do you know what you're stepping into? C. I stared until the letters blurred. Grandpa read over my shoulder, then turned the phone face down in my palm, gentle but firm. We step where truth is, he said, one square at a time. Across the street, a gull lifted and sailed into the gap of sky, white against gray. I felt the pull of wind, even where there was none. Somewhere uptown, a white Prius carried our envelopes toward a building with clean lights and locked doors. See the invisible, the tale had told me. Now we had to. Wednesday broke like a bruise, purple at the edges, tender in the middle. I walked to school in the gray parka, hands deep, beanie low. The coat blocked the wind so well I could hear other sounds I usually missed. The rattle of the 7-over puddles, the clink of the faux shop's metal blinds, a woman laughing into her scarf, and I carried half a turkey sandwich and 2 apples in my backpack. I kept a sleeve of crackers like a secret. In class, Ms. Dillon had us build bridges from popsicle sticks. I paired with Mateo because he kept his pencil behind his ear like Mom did in The Photo. Our bridge kept collapsing until I turned the sticks into triangles like Patrick's kite frame. Triangles don't quit, I told Mateo. He nodded like I'd taught him a magic trick. At lunch, I slid 1 apple to June without anyone seeing. She always ate slow, like she had to ask each bite permission. Thank you, she mouthed. I shrugged in a way that meant you would do it too. When the bell rang, the sky had decided not to rain, just to prove it could. On the curb, Nora waited in a car that didn't look like a boss's car. She waved small so I could pretend we were just neighbors. Grandpa climbed in front. I took the back. The car smelled like clean and lemon again. I got the grocery tab set, Nora said. Under Brooks. Quiet system. You pick what you want. The cashier presses 1 button. No coupons. No fuss. Grandpa squeezed the brim of his cap. We'll pay it forward when we can. You already are, she said. Also, Jamie, your teacher says your coat stopped an argument at recess. Something about who gets to be goalie, I smiled. It makes you feel like a wall. Good, she said. We can use one. We drove up to Capitol Hill because Patrick wanted to see us. On the way, my phone buzzed with a picture from him. The kite by the window, sunlight climbing the blue. Under it, wind report says later. I texted back 3 triangles and a tail, and he sent 1 word, engineer. Upstairs, the lobby plants looked like they'd slept well. Nora flashed her badge at a turnstile. On the terrace, the air had an edge that said afternoon would be meaner. The sound was a strip of metal. Patrick stood near the glass, tube in place, sweater sleeves pushed to his elbows like he was about to fix something. He looked tired in the jaw, not the eyes. You look warm, he said, tapping my coat. Seattle gray suits you. It feels like being inside a building even when you're not, I said. Excellent product review, he said, smiling. He led us into a conference room where a tray held 3 cups of cocoa, 2 coffees, and a little stack of napkins folded into triangles. Rachel was there, pen uncapped. Paper weighted in a neat spread, heavy and precise. I could smell the ink. Patrick rested his hand on the top page. I asked Rachel to draft a codicil, he said. It's a legal add-on to my will. Not about the company shares. Colin and I can argue that until we're dust. This is about the scholarship fund and a small bequest to a trust that Rachel will oversee. The trust isn't for you to spend, Jamie. It's for guardrails, tutoring, camp, a laptop when the time comes, bus fare so your grandfather can come to performances and science fairs. Because good things are also logistics. He glanced at Grandpa. And if I don't make it to see those things, the blueprint stands without me. The room went quiet the way a church does when someone kneels. Grandpa swallowed and nodded once, a man doing math with gratitude and fear and the shape of a future he hadn't let himself draw. What? About your brother? He asked. He'll contest whatever contains my name and the word care, Patrick said, wry. But this is outside the company, inside the law. The Seattle Foundation administers the scholarship. The trust lives with Rachel's firm. Even if Colin wins a press war, he can't reverse a properly executed charitable instrument or a private education trust without proving bad faith. There is no bad faith here. Rachel slid the documents toward Patrick. We'll sign. Then we'll drop certified copies with the foundation and the court clerk in a sealed supplemental packet. I'll file a notice under seal. Colin can yell, but he'll be yelling at a wall of process. Patrick exhaled and signed where yellow tabs told him. His hand shook once, then steadied. He signed again and again. I should have been good at paperwork earlier in life, he said. I wasn't. Being good at it now counts, Rachel said. My cocoa had a film on top that looked like ice. I broke it with my tongue. Tasted like school winters and the inside of mittens. Can we fly the kite later? I asked. Patrick's face warmed. We can try. Weather owes us, Nora checked the sky. Later today, the wind graduates from playful to rude, she said. We should aim before rude. We took the kite to the terrace. Patrick held the stand while I lifted the frame, tail streaming. Nora anchored the laminated tail with a clip so it wouldn't hit the tank. Grandpa took video on his old phone like a grandparent at a game. I ran a few steps, the paper rose, caught an updraft off the building face, and lifted. The tail fluttered. The faint pencil words shone through the clear coat like an old message you'd traced on glass. See the invisible. The kite hummed, a whisper stringing past my ear. For a minute, Seattle was a thing a child and an old man and a tired man and a woman with a clipboard could hold together, unspooling and steady, both. Then the wind did what Nora promised, turned rude, and we brought the kite, down with laughing hands. Patrick's laugh turned to a small cough. He leaned against the wall, breathing slow until the tube did the rest. You good? I asked. Just arguing with gravity, he said, smiling without the edges. We went inside. Nora set the kite back by the window. Patrick sank into a chair and closed his eyes for the length of one slow inhale. When he opened them, he looked at me like people do before they say something that might rearrange the furniture in your head. I don't know what the lab will tell us, he said. I know what I feel when you walk into a room. I know what I owe the world if I don't get more rooms. Don't say that part, I said too fast. He nodded. Okay, then I'll say this. I want to be the kind of man who deserves a 6-year-old's kindness. Then keep showing up. Honest, thawed, and the grown-ups blinked like someone had cracked a window. We left before the weather turned worse. On the sidewalk, I watched a kid my size kick at a puddle with his father and misjudge the depth. The splash got both their jeans. They laughed like it didn't matter. I tucked the image away like a good marble. That evening, our apartment smelled like rice and detergent. Grandpa folded towels in the warm light while the news talked about the port, about ferries, about a council meeting I didn't understand. I sat on the floor and tried to copy the kite's frame with chopsticks, practicing knots from a YouTube video where a man said, "Buddy," a lot. My phone buzzed. A text from Colin again. You're playing with a matchbook in a room full of curtains. I stared at it until the letters meant nothing, then turned the phone face down and slid it under my math workbook. The kite would not care what a curtain thought of a flame. It would aim for the wind. 9 o'clock laid its hand on the building, quieting the hallway. I brushed my teeth, the mint making my nose sting pleasantly. I crawled into bed and pulled the gray blanket up. The radiator ticked like an old clock, thinking about time. My eyes drifted. The phone went off again, but not a text. The sound that means a call that people hope you answer. Grandpa picked up in the kitchen. Hello? His voice went formal, without trying. A beat. Then the sound people make when something tightens around their chest all at once. He turned toward my room even though I was already standing in the doorway. It's Nora, he said, voice a low field with wind across it. Patrick had trouble breathing. They've admitted him at Swedish First Hill. He's asking for us if we can come. Everything in me went very still and very awake. I slipped into my shoes without tying them, grabbed the beanie, and did not feel the floor. The hall light flicked on like a shout. Grandpa checked his wallet. Keys, phone in one motion, like he'd trained to move toward emergencies his whole life. On the bus stop bench, rain started up again. Polite first, then mean. The 7 took too long. The 7 always takes too long when you need it to be the 1. When it came, we climbed in, and the heater blasted, and a woman with a grocery bag offered me her seat. I said thank you like Mom had taught me to say whenever the universe handed you a small boat. We got off on Madison. The hospital a stack of light in the wet. Automatic doors side us into a lobby with polished floors and a volunteer whose face tried to be all the good news at once. The elevator dinged like a small bell that didn't know what it was summoning. We rose, with numbers and strangers and the sound of rubber shoes. At the 8th floor, the doors parted to a hallway that smelled like lemon and fear. Nora stood near the nurse's station, hair darker with rain, clipboard under her arm like always, eyes carrying a knight they hadn't planned to carry. She saw me first. Her face made the shape people make when they want to be both anchor and lighthouse. "Hey, engineer," she said gently. "He's stable." "He's asking who won the kite game," I breathed. My knees loosened. Somewhere, a monitor kept a clean, stubborn rhythm. Beyond a door, a blue tail moved in air conditioning that felt almost like wind. The hallway hummed with the kind of silence that has its own heartbeat. Monitors whispered through walls. Nurses spoke in half-words, and the smell of antiseptic tangled with rain that had followed us in from the street. The world here was soft shoes and closed doors, the hum of machines holding breath for people who couldn't. Nora led us toward room 814. "They've stabilized his oxygen levels," she said quietly. It was a sudden drop. Cough turned into a bronchospasm. "He's resting now. Can we see him?" I asked. She nodded. "One at a time. He'll be glad you're here." Grandpa touched my shoulder. "You first, buddy." The door side open on hydraulic hinges. The room was dim, except for the blue wash of monitors. Patrick lay propped up against white pillows, face paler than the sheets, but his eyes, those gray-blue eyes, found me fast. The oxygen line trailed from his nose to a bigger tank now. A soft whistle pulsed in the rhythm of his breath. "Hey, engineer," he rasped. I went to the side of his bed, careful not to step on any cords. "Hey, boss," he smiled. "The kind that needs effort, but gives more than it costs." "Nora told me you brought the wind today." "I think it followed me from Rainier," I said, pulling the chair closer. "It wanted to check on you." "Good," he murmured. "Tell it I'm still in the race." I nodded, watching the green line climb and fall. "They said you had trouble breathing." "Had, past tense. I'm better now," he said, though the rasp lingered under his words. "Just tired lungs." They like to remind me who's boss. I looked at the small table beside him. On it sat the blue kite, folded neatly, tail trailing off like a question mark. "You brought it." "I told them it helps me breathe," he said. "And it does." The words hit soft but deep. I reached out and smoothed the tail where it crinkled. The faint pencil letters still ghosted. Through the laminate. "See the invisible." "Patrick," I said, "is that what it means to you?" He smiled faintly. "It means faith. Not in gods, not even in machines. Faith in the space between, the part you can't prove but know is there." His eyes drifted toward the window. "You and Claire always had that." "Mom did," I said. "I'm still learning." He turned his head, gaze heavy with memory. "When I met her, she made me laugh in meetings. Everyone else saw code. She saw stories. She said computers were just kites. We throw them into wind and hope they fly." He coughed lightly. The monitor chirped once, then settled. "I should have followed her that summer." "Why didn't you?" I asked. The question small, almost scared. "Because I thought ambition could hold the same weight as love." His voice was quiet enough that I had to lean in. Turns out it can't. The door opened softly, and Grandpa stepped in, hat in hand. "Hey there, partner." Patrick gave him a weak salute. "Mr. Brooks, you run that night shift like a symphony?" "Still sweeping floors that glow," Grandpa said, pulling another chair closer. "How you feeling?" "Grateful," Patrick said, and he meant it. A nurse came in, checked vitals with gentle hands, adjusted the drip. "Keep talking," she said with a smile. "He likes the sound." When she left, Grandpa leaned forward, elbows on knees. "We got the test in," he said. "Rachel called. The lab courier logged receipt. Results by Friday or Monday." Patrick nodded slowly. I appreciate you both for going through that. Whatever comes, it stays between us until you decide otherwise. That's fair, Grandpa said. Outside, thunder murmured like a stomach far away. The window glass shimmered with each flash. For a while, we didn't speak. The monitor beeped steady as a heart remembering its job. Patrick stirred. Do you know what's strange, Jamie? What? Being here, hooked to tubes, I've never felt more alive. Because it forced me to see the things I ignored, the people who stayed. His eyes moved to me, to Grandpa, back to the kite. You two stayed. I swallowed the lump in my throat. We'll keep staying. He smiled. Deal. Nora appeared at the door again, holding a paper bag. I brought dinner, she said. Hospital food's not real food. She unpacked sandwiches, 2 for us, 1 for Patrick, that smelled like hope more than taste. Turkey on wheat, light mustard, she said. Doctor-approved rebellion. Patrick chuckled. You know me too well. I try, she said. Rachel's downstairs on a call with the lab. Colin filed something in probate. She's handling it. Of course he did, Patrick muttered. He hates being late to a fight. What kind of fight? I asked. A paperwork kind, Nora said. The safe kind. Grandpa frowned. What's he after? Control, Patrick said softly. Of the company. Of me, of whatever looks like legacy. You can't control legacy, Grandpa. Grandpa said, you can only live it. Patrick smiled tiredly. That's the difference between a builder and a board member. For a long moment, the rain pressed harder, a percussion behind glass. Then the storm softened, leaving the world washed and raw. Patrick leaned back, eyelids fluttering. Can I tell you something? He said. Sure. There's a letter. In my desk drawer at home, top right. Nora knows the key. It's for you. His hand twitched as if to wave away worry. Not a will, just a story I wanted you to have. About the first kite I ever broke, why tell me now? I asked. Because sometimes we don't get to schedule honesty, he said, a small grin breaking through the lines. And I'd like you to know the sound of my voice when I say your name, before machines have to help. My throat went tight. Okay, I said barely. He closed his eyes. The monitor beeped, slow, steady. Good. Then I can rest a little. Grandpa touched my shoulder, whispering, let's give him time. We stepped into the hallway. The nurse smiled softly. He's stable. We'll keep an eye through the night. Down the hall, I saw Colin through a glass pane talking to Rachel. Low voices, measured movements. His expression was stone. Rachel's was steel. When he saw me, he hesitated, then turned away. In the waiting room, I sat beside a vending machine humming like a distant engine. Grandpa bought 2 hot chocolates from it, both too sweet. Your mom would have liked that man, he said. She already did, I answered. He looked at me for a long moment, pride flickering in his eyes. She'd be proud of you too. We stayed until midnight, listening to the hum of the hospital. When a nurse told us he was sleeping peacefully, we slipped out into the night. Rain had stopped. The streets steamed like they were exhaling. At home, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, watching headlights smear across wet asphalt. Somewhere above, room 814 glowed faint and steady against the skyline. I imagined the kite near his bed, the tail whispering every time the air shifted. See the invisible. Thursday came gray and early. Nora texted at dawn. Vitals steady. Doctor wants him on observation through weekend. Rest. But at noon, another text followed. Lab results arrived. Rachel says Patrick wants to open them together. Friday 9 a.m. at the hospital. My hands trembled reading it. Grandpa rubbed his temples, the same way he did when math went long. Tomorrow, huh? Tomorrow, I said. We find out. He looked at me and nodded. Whatever it says, kid, you already know who you are. Outside, gulls circled the gray sound, bright and loud in the wind. I thought about windows and doors, about scraps and drafts, and all the words that never got sent but still reached anyway. I thought about Patrick's voice in the dark, soft but sure. We'd open truth in a white room tomorrow. But tonight, The kite still flew in both our chests. The next morning, the hospital windows caught a weak kind of sunlight, the kind that tries but never fully arrives. We rode the elevator to the 8th floor with 2 cups of vending machine cocoa and nerves that had nowhere to hide. Grandpa wore his cleanest shirt, the one he saved for things that mattered. I held the paper bag of apple muffins Nora had asked me to bring, just in case we all need sweetness. Rachel met us outside room 814. Her briefcase was under her arm, her eyes calm, unreadable. "The lab courier delivered results at 7 sharp," she said. I verified the seal, logged the chain, and opened the outer packet, only to confirm contents. "Patrick wants everyone here before we read the result." "Everyone?" Grandpa asked. Rachel hesitated. "Including Colin." The name felt like a chill down the hall before the door opened. Colin Lane stepped in, suit immaculate, reins still jeweled in his hair. He nodded politely to Grandpa, then to me. "Morning." I muttered something that was probably hi, but it came out small. Patrick sat up in bed, oxygen steady, a fleece blanket tucked over his lap. The blue kite hung from a metal IV pole, tail fluttering. In the AC's breath, his face was thinner, but his smile had a kind of quiet power now. "Everyone's here," he said. "Let's find out who I've been talking to all these years." Rachel opened the folder. She handled the papers like they were instruments. No drama, no delay. Washington Genetics Lab Report. Case number 217. Relationship test between Subject A, Patrick Lane, and Subject B, Jamie Brooks. The room held its breath. I could hear my own pulse. "Result," Rachel continued, eyes scanning the line twice before speaking. "Probability of paternity, 99.987%. Within accepted certainty, Patrick Lane is the biological father of Jamie Brooks." The words landed softly, like snow that still changes the whole street. I didn't move at first. Patrick's mouth opened, then closed. His hand went to the side of his face, fingers shaking like the world had just tilted toward him. Grandpa's hand found my shoulder. I felt him steady me and himself at the same time. Patrick laughed once, not loud, more like disbelief, folded into gratitude. "Claire," he whispered, his voice breaking on her name. "You really did build something that flies." Rachel set the paper down. "These results are sealed under confidentiality. No media, no leaks. If anyone files a motion to contest, the test stands admissible." Colin's jaw flexed. "So that's it?" he said quietly. Patrick turned to him. "That's it." "You've got your facts." Brother Colin looked at me. For the first time, his eyes softened, not as surrender, but as understanding. "You have her eyes," he said. Then, almost to himself, "and his stubbornness." "I get that from both, I guess," I said, trying a half smile. He sighed, slipping a folded paper from his pocket. "I drafted an injunction last night. I'm tearing it up." He did cleanly, without ceremony, and set the pieces in the trash beside Patrick's bed. "You win." Patrick shook his head. "It's not a contest anymore, Colin." "I know." His gaze held for a second longer, then he left. The room quietly, leaving the scent of rain behind. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft flutter of the kite tail and the steady beep that felt like the room's own heartbeat. Then Patrick looked at me, really looked. "Come here, Jamie." I stepped closer. He reached out, his hand rough but steady now, and cupped the back of my head the way a father does when words don't reach far enough. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "You already gave me back my breath." My throat tightened. "I don't know what to call you." He smiled. "You already did, when you called me boss." I laughed, and so did Grandpa, and the sound filled the sterile room until even the nurse in the hall smiled at it. Nora slipped in quietly with the muffins, placed the bag on the tray table. "Doctor says you can have solid food now," she said. "Seems like a good time for apple." Patrick looked at her, at all of us. "Let's celebrate with muffins and bad hospital coffee." We did. The muffins were too sweet, the coffee too bitter, and somehow perfect. Patrick ate half and pushed the rest toward me. "Finish that, engineer," he said. When the nurse returned, she smiled at the sight. Vitals look good. Maybe you'll get parole soon, Patrick grinned. I'll behave. Don't, she said, laughing. Just heal. After she left, he turned serious again. Rachel, file the codicil today, he said. Make sure Jamie's trust and the scholarship fund are beyond challenge. Already done, she replied. The foundation's executive director confirmed receipt. Grandpa looked down, shaking his head. Never thought I'd see a day like this. Patrick smiled. Neither did I. He leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Claire used to say legacy isn't about who remembers your name. It's about who keeps building when you can't. He opened them again, looking at me. So you keep building, okay? Bridges, kites, whatever the wind allows, I will, I said. Outside the window, a patch of sunlight slipped through the clouds, landing right on the kite's blue paper. The tail lifted, caught a current only it could feel. For a second, it looked alive. Rachel gathered her things. I'll give you privacy, she said softly. When the door clicked shut, Patrick looked at Grandpa. You raised him right. Grandpa's eyes went glassy. I just kept him dry. Patrick smiled faintly. Sometimes that's the whole miracle. The room quieted again. We sat there together. Three people who didn't know what to do with peace after fighting weather for so long. Finally, Patrick reached for the folded kite, smoothing its creases with his hand. When they discharge me, he said, I want to take him up there again, the roof. Let him fly it properly. Grandpa chuckled. You just got out of breathing trouble and you're already planning rooftop adventures. Patrick shrugged. Breathing's just air if you don't share it. Outside, the clouds broke a little more. I leaned on the windowsill, watching light fall on. The wet city, bright in patches, shy in others. Seattle looked cleaner, like someone had wiped the glass. For the first time in a long time, the world felt open. Not like a door you push, but like a window you never noticed could move. When I turned back, Patrick had closed his eyes again, but the smile stayed. The kite's tail brushed his hand once, and as if to say, still flying. Tomorrow would bring paperwork and press, questions and protection orders, maybe even more storms. But in that moment, there was just us, the light, and a blue kite that had somehow carried 3 lives back into the same wind. Friday night wrapped the city in quiet drizzle. The kind that painted every window gold and made the crosswalk lights look slower, kinder. We stayed in the hospital until visiting hours ended, then took the 12 home in silence, both of us leaning into the rhythm of the road. Grandpa's eyes were rimmed red, but not from tears. More like he'd finally exhaled a year he didn't know he'd been holding. By Saturday morning, the sky turned silver. The air had that clean after-rain smell that makes you believe in fresh starts. Nora called early. He's being discharged this afternoon, she said. Doctor says he's cleared for light activity, not marathons. Wants the air, not the stairs. Grandpa smiled into the phone. He'll try both. Probably, Nora said. He mentioned wanting to see the roof again. The words sparked something in my chest. Can we go? Already arranged, she said. Bring your coat and the kite. At noon, we took the elevator back to the top floor of Lane Systems. The building gleamed in the washed light, windows reflecting the sound like sheets of tin. The rooftop garden smelled faintly of wet cedar and soil. The blue kite waited, clipped to the rail, its tail drying in the breeze. Patrick was there, standing without the hospital gown, dressed in a charcoal jacket, oxygen tank, smaller now, portable. He looked fragile and strong at once, the way old bridges look when they still hold every car that trusts them. He turned when he heard our footsteps. Thought I'd need the wind to find you, he said. Wind works for both of us, I said, holding up the kite. Nora set a thermos on the table and poured coffee for Grandpa, tea for herself, something herbal for Patrick. The steam curled between us, fragile as breath. Rachel arrived a moment later, papers in her hand, but no briefcase this time. She wore a red scarf, the only bright color in a city full of gray. Everything's filed, she said. offering Patrick a pen. "You're now officially Board Advisor Emeritus of Lane Systems, effective immediately." "Meaning?" Grandpa asked. "Meaning he still gets to be the wise ghost at meetings," Rachel said, smiling. "But his brother can't overrule the scholarship or the trust." Patrick signed, slow and sure. "Good." "Ghost suits me." He turned to me, handing over the pen. "Want to do the honors?" I blinked. "Me?" He nodded toward the kite. "Write what comes. Next on the tail. You've earned that much sky." I crouched near the railing, uncapped the pen, and thought. The laminates still carry the old words faint under the surface. "See the invisible." I added beneath it, small but certain, "Build what you find." Patrick read it, lips forming the words. "Claire would have liked that." "I think she's already reading it," Grandpa said. Nora's phone buzzed. She checked it, then turned the screen toward Patrick. A short headline glowed on a news site. "Lane Systems founder funds education trust for underprivileged youth. No leaks, no scandal, just truth printed clean." Patrick chuckled. "Rachel, remind me to thank the journalist who finally spelled philanthropy right." "Already sent flowers," she said. We all laughed quietly. Then the wind rose, steady and playful, tugging at my sleeve. Patrick nodded toward the kite. "Let's fly it once more." He took the string in his left hand, braced his right on the railing. I stood beside him, fingers on the spool. The blue paper shivered, lifted, and soared. It climbed higher than before, tail tracing loops of sunlight through mist. Below, the city gleamed in watercolor strokes, buses sliding, ferries slicing, the world going on. Patrick's laugh broke open, pure and unguarded. "Look at her go." The kite caught a current and steadied, blue against silver. The tail snapped once, a sound like applause. Grandpa leaned on the railing, eyes shining. "Haven't seen that kind of joy in a long time." Nora wiped her cheek without hiding it. "Wind's doing its job." Patrick handed me the spool. "She's yours now." I hesitated. "You'll still fly it, right?" He shook his head. "No need. It knows the way home." The words sat between us, heavy and gentle. He looked out at the horizon, where the sound met the clouds. His breathing deepened, the rhythm slow but steady. "You know," he said softly, "I used to think legacy meant people remembering your name. Now I think it's people remembering what you cared." "About what did you care about?" I asked. He smiled. "Second chances." And blue kites. The wind pulled harder, and the kite rose until it was a speck against the gray. I watched it tremble and shine, the way stars do before night claims them. Behind us, Rachel checked her watch, then quietly motioned to Grandpa and Nora to give him a moment. They stepped back, giving the air room. Patrick's hand tightened briefly on the railing, then relaxed. "Jamie," he said, voice almost lost to the wind. "Promise me you'll keep building. Even when it's raining, especially when it's raining, I promise," I said. He nodded, eyes bright. "Good. Then I can rest easy." I turned to say something more, but he was already looking up, past the kite, past the clouds, as if the whole sky had come closer to meet him. The breeze caught the tail, lifting it higher, and in that shimmer of light, the laminated blue gleamed like a heartbeat. Then he exhaled, a long, quiet breath that left peace behind. They said, later it was quick, no pain, just the body deciding it had said what it needed to. The doctor called it cardiac arrest. Nora called it mercy. I just called it unfair and beautiful in the same breath. The hospital took him gently. Rachel handled the paperwork, Nora the calls. Grandpa held my hand the whole way home, his thumb tracing circles like he used to when I was little and scared of thunder. That night, Seattle stayed awake. The rain tapped soft against glass, steady as his breathing used to be. On my desk, the kite string coiled like a question I wasn't ready to answer. In the morning, the sky cleared for the first time in weeks. Light spilled across the windowsill, touching the blue paper still hanging by the corner. I lifted it, the words shining faint under the glaze. "See the invisible. Build what you find." Grandpa came to the doorway. "He'd like that," he said. I nodded. voice caught somewhere between grief and gratitude. He already does. Outside, the wind stirred the trees. I opened the window and let it in. The kite tail fluttered once, as if someone unseen had tugged the string from above. The morning of the memorial came with the gentlest kind of light, thin and amber, the way a city looks when it forgives the night. The lane system's rooftop had been transformed. Rows of folding chairs faced the skyline. A single easel held a framed photo of Patrick. No suit, no oxygen tube, just him in a flannel shirt, hair wild from wind, laughing toward something unseen. Beside the photo, the blue kite leaned against the railing, its tail glinting faintly in the sun. People began arriving in quiet waves. Engineers in denim jackets, custodians from the lower floors, a barista from the lobby cafe who'd always added extra cinnamon to his cappuccino. Rachel moved through the crowd, greeting each one with the steadiness of a captain keeping a ship straight. Nora stood near the podium, holding her notes but never reading them. She'd lost count of how many reporters had asked to cover this, and how many she'd told no. This wasn't a press event. This was air and memory. Grandpa and I sat in the front row. He'd ironed his only white shirt. I wore the gray parka Patrick had called Seattle armor. The wind lifted my hair, played with the kite tail. I felt ready and not ready all at once. When Nora began, her voice carried just enough. Patrick believed in things you couldn't see, she said. He built a company from code and late nights and arguments, but what mattered most to him wasn't profit, it was possibility. He used to say, legacy isn't money, it's motion. She gestured toward the kite. When he met Jamie, he said it felt like the universe had returned something unfinished. Today we dedicate the Claire Brooks Innovation Trust, the scholarship he founded in memory of the woman who first taught him what building really meant, and the son who reminded him what flying felt like. People clapped softly. I kept my eyes on the kite. Rachel stepped forward next. Patrick's final instructions were clear, she said. The trust is fully endowed, legally protected, and active as of this morning. Its first award will fund 5 students from Rainier Valley in the STEAM program this fall. He wanted to make sure that even after his breath stopped, the air he believed in kept moving. Grandpa wiped at his eye. That's the kind of ghost I don't mind hanging around, he whispered. When it was my turn, Nora crouched beside me. You don't have to, she said. I know, I told her, but I want to. I walked to the podium. The microphone made a tiny pop that sounded too big in the quiet. I could see the city stretching behind them. Glass towers, cranes, water catching light. I thought about the first day in Volunteer Park, about the rain, the bench, the handkerchief, with the stitched J. Patrick used to say wind doesn't need to be seen to be trusted, I began. He taught me that sometimes people are like that too. My voice wavered, but I didn't. Stop. He fixed my kite. Then he fixed something else I didn't know was broken. He made promises, and he kept them. And when he couldn't keep breathing, he gave the rest of his breath to other kids who will build things because he believed in them first. I looked toward the easel. He told me to build what I find. So that's what I'll do. For a second, no one moved. Then the wind picked up again, soft, patient. The kite's tail brushed the rail, fluttering like applause. People smiled through tears. Nora stood beside me and touched my shoulder. He'd be proud, she said. I think he already is, I answered. Later that afternoon, after the crowd left and the catering trays were gone, only 4 of us remained. Me, Grandpa, Nora, and Rachel. The city below hummed its regular noise again, as if the world had folded the grief neatly and set it aside for later. Nora unclipped the kite from the rail and handed it to me. He said you'd know what to do with it. I nodded. He wanted it to fly. Again, Grandpa smiled. Then let's give him what he asked for. We crossed to the far edge of the roof where the wind was strongest. The sound shimmered under us, ferries cutting white scars across the water. I gripped the spool, felt the string bite into my palm in that good way, the way that means connection, not pain. Ready? I called. Nora nodded, holding the tail steady. Ready when you are. I took a running step, small legs against big sky, and the kite leapt. For an instant, it hesitated. Then the air found it, lifted it, carried it higher. The blue flashed against the sun, spinning once, twice before catching a clean current. It rose past the rooftop's edge, above the cranes, until it was just a speck of moving blue against the white clouds. Grandpa tilted his head back, grinning like a man seeing the world reset. "Look at that." Rachel wiped her eyes. "Perfect flight path." Nora shaded her gaze. "It's like he's watching from there." The wind steadied. The kite hung, not fighting, just belonging. I felt the pull on the string, firm and alive, and whispered to the sky, "You can rest now. We'll keep building." The tail flickered once, one small movement, and I swear it answered. We stood there until the light turned gold and the city's hum softened into something close to peace. As the sun slipped behind the sound, I began winding the string back in slow circles. The kite dipped, glided, then landed against my chest, still warm from the air. I folded it carefully, tracing the faint words under the laminate one last time. "See the invisible. Build what you find." Grandpa placed his hand on my shoulder, steady and proud. "Come on, kid," he said. "Time to head home." I looked up at the empty sky where the kite had been, the color of evening now. For a heartbeat, I could almost see him there, laughing in the wind, eyes bright, the air finally his own. Then I smiled, because it felt true. And we walked off the roof together, the wind following us down the stairs.